Hello everybody and welcome back to the 15th episode of Tides of Lore. My name is Robert Silva. I am one half of your host team, joined as always by my good friend Tim. How you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing well, man. I'm excited for the next patch with retail. Seems like it's gonna be a fun time. Have you looked at it?
No, I think we're gonna look into it in our own time here in a little bit, but I've done my best to avoid anything except knowing basically its name and that it is featuring goblins.
Yeah, it looks cool. It looks cool. I'm excited to learn more about the goblins too. But yeah, I've just been playing retail, getting ready for that. It's been a good time, man. The retail gets some hate, but I'm having fun with it right now, man.
I mean, I chronically swap back and forth between classic and retail. I mean, they'll have a classic event or something, or they're like, we're doing fresh servers, and I'm like, okay, I'm on. We're doing hardcore, okay, I'm on. And then retail will release its new patch or its new expansion, and I'm not just gonna throw away those 10 years of playing the game.
There's mounts to get. There's mounts
I'm at
to get.
497, dude.
Almost at the otter, because at 500,
so
500 is the otter.
I know.
Yeah.
And I was really hoping that by the time that I acquired the otter, that they would have come to their senses and given it skywriting.
I have to check. I know it didn't, but it's been some time. I really hope it's not still like that. Like, it can regular fly, but last time I checked it, yeah. I haven't tried it in a while.
Checked on Wowhead, and there was a comment from 28 days ago that was mentioning how disappointed they were that it could not skywrite. So I am assuming that nothing has changed.
That's very disappointing. You know, like, hey, put all this work into getting this mount and use it on boomer riding, you know?
The only time I even use boomer riding is when I'm doing like the what's it called, the ringing depths stuff, where they're like, go find all the goo. And I just find it more beneficial to move slower because I feel like they spawn more often. But that is quite literally the only time I turn off skywriting.
Or yeah, if I don't want to, like, for some reason I have to go places pretty close to each other and I'm like running out of the burst, you know, the air burst.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, then I'll use the other kind of riding just because I'm going like from point to point very quickly. But yeah.
Yeah, I've also been getting back into retail a lot, trying to get my mount runs going up again, because it's so sad to me, because there was that time period during Legion where I was so heavily into grinding mounts, and I look at my like simple armory, and every expansion before that has like a nearly completely filled out mounts, and then it reaches BFA and beyond, and it is just barren wasteland, and it makes me so sad.
Yeah, so you're almost at 5. Yeah, no, I'm not trying to rub it. I'm just looking 626. I've been trying to keep up with it. I've been trying. But
Yeah.
dude, also the trading post, dude, that's easy mounts each month.
That is true, and I'm happy that you showed me those discounted ones, because
Oh yeah.
it gave me the purpose to actually grind for trading tender. Last episode, we spoke about the second half of Varian Wrynn's story in the Eastern Kingdoms, as well as the doppelganger Varian Wrynn and the culmination of the plot of Onyxia. What do you remember about that?
I remember Varian still being split, right? He's still two halves right now. And he had to do his, dude, it was very similar to the Blackrock Depth attunement to get into Onyxia. Like, he had to free his friend, he had to confront Onyxia, and then what? Onyxia stole Anduin, right?
Yep. I think that's like one of the only few differences between that and the actual attunement.
And yeah, because there, in the actual attunement, you go up and just confront her, and then the guards spawn, and then I think she gets away. But yeah, I guess she steals Anduin, and then Varian and Jaina.
They have Brawl, and they have Valera with them, and they also had Thagras and Volmar.
So I hear a lot of DPS, not a single healer.
Apparently not. Anduin's not a priest yet, so he's not healing nobody. But I guess, and Brawl is like, seems very much more like a balanced druid. Or you would like a feral, or
he's gonna go He's not gonna be able to off heal. I feel like, you know,
he's gonna run out of mana halfway through the raid.
So I don't know how they did it, but somehow without a healer they managed to take down Onyxia
because they have the greatest warrior in history.
I guess. I mean, it makes sense. I don't know if he has like Diamond Flask healing on the side, or I have no idea.
I mean, he's just is like level 80 doing it.
Yeah.
Got it on
and then he becomes whole again, right?
Yep.
And I think that's about where we left off. I think some other things happened, like the Thandal span, the bridge got blown up, if I remember correctly.
Those
But other
damn
than
dark
that,
irons.
I think that's mainly what we talked about last episode.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. We also briefly spoke about Valera's mana addiction, but that story is actually kind of resolved at this point. It does continue on in the comics, but the comics do now reach this point after this storyline where a lot of it becomes not canon, so we're probably going to avoid most of that. We might get into some of the Cho'Gall stuff because it does lead into the Ankh-Kiraj storyline, but outside of that, yeah, we're pretty much done with the comics, at least those comics.
It's a cool era, the comics. I like it. It's a little different vibe than these days.
I feel like it was like a teetering point where they're like, do we want to make this more violent of a game? And then they're like, Mr. Pandaria hit, and they're like, maybe we'll make it more comical, actually. And with that, we did have a handful of comments from last week. Last week, even before this, I mentioned that we had our biggest subscriber jump ever, and this week was even bigger than that one. So I really appreciate you guys' support. Yes, and we got a ton of comments that were super supportive, and we're just gonna go over some of these real quick. First one we have is at Yeti3825, and he says, "This is my new favorite YouTube channel. The storytelling flows so well back and forth between you two, and it helps me stay focused through the whole thing. Even the art playing the whole time keeps my eyes glued to the screen, even though I only mean to have this play while I work on other things. Keep up the amazing work, guys."
Dude, I love that. I love watching on YouTube because just the background. It's so nice. Well, that's very nice.
And with these Varian ones, it's great because you're usually I'm talking about a specific character and I have okay, I got 5 images that are official Blizzard art to work with for this character. But when it comes to the comics, it's just here is exactly what it looked like. So I do love that.
A lot of people haven't seen the comics. I didn't really even know about it until now.
I feel like a lot of people kind of knew about the Ashbringer comic because it's so pivotal to the story. But when it comes to this one, yeah, a lot of people I think kind of just wrote it off and didn't address it too much. After that, we do have the Comeback Kids saying, "Just found this channel. Love the content, guys. Keep killing it." Again, another amazing comment that is just making me feel good. I'll be honest, most of these ones that I've highlighted today just make me feel good. We also had Sigma Metroid 2630 saying, "Excellent work." And that is quite literally it. But again, I just wanted to highlight how much support you guys have been giving us, and it really means a lot to us. We had Luke Len Bias 396564 saying, "Just found you guys, instant subscription. Keep it up. Love the discussion." And we also had one final comment that I did want to highlight, which was actually over on TikTok that I just thought was really funny, at least in terms of how we discussed it. That was being, "Dialer Mall was such a pill back in 2004 to 2008. Middle of nowhere, lame loot table, but it has the best place to get a ripped ogre loincloth." And I thought the real question for this was the loincloth ripped or was the ogre?
I actually like some of the DM loot. Hot take. Some of the DM loot I feel like was actually decent.
I am inclined to agree, especially as a mage, because that's where you get your best water and stuff like that. So it's pretty goated in my opinion. But in all fairness, there are 3 wings to it and they look exactly the same, basically. So
yeah, it is dull. Yeah.
But yeah, those were the comments that we got from last week's episodes, and we really appreciate those. So keep them coming, you guys, and maybe you'll be in the next episode. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Tides of Lore on YouTube, or if you're on Spotify, leave us a 5-star rating. It really helps the channel, ensures you won't miss a moment of this adventure. Now let's get started. In this episode, we are going to finish up talking about the storylines of the Black Dragons, because we talked about Onyxia, and she's kind of our intro to that. Now we got the remaining stories of the Black Dragons and what they get up to in this episode. Starting off with Deathwing. You remember when Deathwing went through the portal during some of our earliest episodes when I told you that he went and laid some eggs on Outland?
I do remember that, and I think that's why I've seen dragons like that out in Outland.
I mean,
yeah,
all of the dragons in Outland essentially come from these eggs, because there were no dragons on Outland beforehand, to the ire of the Dragonmaw Clan.
So are all of the dragons black dragons on Outland, or are there different types?
They are. They all at least descend from the Black Dragons, and that's actually the story that we're going to get into today, because when he does go out there, he spreads a bunch of these eggs across Outland from Gorgron to the Frostfire Ridge and so on and so forth. And one of the people that this really upsets, because they he also sends like a regiment of his own black dragons out there to defend these eggs while they grow, was the Gruul, who we did talk about in the very, very first episode of Tides of Lore, very briefly, but just kind of their conflict with the rest of the races on Draenor. And the Gruul really don't like the dragons. Pretty much immediately, they see these dragons, specifically in the area called the Blade's Edge Mountains. And they begin to essentially wage war on them, specifically the major Gruul that we kind of talked about in the first episode as well, Gruul, who will go on to gain the title of the Dragonslayer. And
I mean, he's pretty badass, dude. I can imagine. Dude, even like 20 of us. How many people was it in TBC? 20? 25?
I honestly couldn't tell you. That Gruul's lair is such a fever dream because it feels like it should be so easy, and then you're in there for like 6 hours.
Yeah, in bad groups. Then you're in good groups, and it's like one shots, right?
Yeah, that is fair. But yeah, Gruul is kind of the major Gruul of all the Gruuls on Outland at this point, and he is the father of the other 7 major warlord Gruul that exist on the planet that also are waging war against these dragons. And also, Gruul has a little army of ogres that actually work for him too, because he has given them his favor, basically. And these are the Blade Spire. And like we kind of mentioned back in the first episode as well, the ogres, they kind of set themselves apart from the rest of the races on Outland because they are arcanely gifted and they have the ability to use magic. So Gruul, along with these Blade Spire ogres, uses magic to basically make the dragons land, and then he pummels them to death. So effective. Yeah, very effective. You know, the Skyrim strat.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. You do that in Skyrim. You learn that shout. They bring him to the ground, and yeah,
then you bonk him as hard as you can, bro.
Yeah, dude. Shield bash them. You know, make them stop breathing fire.
But yeah, so using these incantations, they pull the dragons from the sky, and the Gruul just systematically slaughter them. And they begin just smashing apart these black dragon eggs and basically making an example out of the dragons, because then they even take these smaller drakes, I guess you would just kind of call them. They're not like fully sized dragons like some of the bigger ones you'll encounter, but they're pretty sizable. And Gruul's like, I think we'll send a message if we put them on spikes in the Blade's Edge Mountains. And he does. That's why even now when you go to Outland, go to the Blade's Edge Mountains, you will find a bunch of dragon corpses impaled upon spikes. And
the atmosphere in TBC is one of the things that I think makes TBC so good. Like, think of all the zones like that, Shatrath, like just the atmosphere, Netherstorm.
I can't believe you would not mention this Anger Marsh. I feel like
Anger Marsh
is so
I did. I mean, all of Hellfire even, dude. I mean, some people hate it, but it's like, it is iconic. Just the atmosphere.
I think the only one I would say I'm slightly disappointed with in Outland is Shadow Moon Valley, which I feel like is wrong to say because it is a cool zone. But I guess by the time that I've played so much World of Warcraft and I've gotten so many fell infected zones, it just feels kind of uninspired.
I feel like you don't do as much in that zone, or maybe I just didn't.
I mean, I think it's literally locked until 60, and by that time, you're just like, I'll do anything. I'm just trying to get that flying mount.
Or 70, yeah.
70, yeah, you're right. Deathwing, eventually, because after he laid these eggs out here, he's like, all right, I've been working with some orcs over in Azeroth, so I got to make sure that Alexstrasza is all chained up still in Grim Batol. So he flies back out to Azeroth once again, leaves the eggs there with his lesser dragons. The lesser dragons get slaughtered, and it is not exactly made clear why Deathwing returns to Outland, but it is kind of, you know, I think you can draw a logical line that, well, the dragons were slaughtered out there, so he's either going out there to kill the guys that slaughtered his flight or to, you know, work on some more hiding spots for them. And he goes out there, and he meets with following the events of the Second War, there was Ner'zhul, who fled to Outland and is kind of being convinced by Terran Gorefiend to restart the Horde and do their best efforts to get back off of Outland because it's fucked. And one of the people that agrees to work with Ner'zhul is Deathwing. Deathwing's just like, hey man, you can get some help from my black dragons if you help me out. I really would like that nice shiny skull of Gul'dan you got there. And he's like, bet, here, take it. Which is kind of funny because I don't really think that he actually gives him anything. At least it doesn't make it super clear that he's like, okay, and here are 10 dragons that'll help you out. It seems like he's just like, thanks, bye.
I'll call on you when I need you.
Yeah,
is the vibe that I'm getting. You owe me a favor.
yeah, I guess that does make sense. So he's got his IOU, and and Deathwing has the Skull of Gul'dan. And Deathwing then takes the Skull of Gul'dan to the Blade's Edge Mountains, and seeing the corpses of all of his flight, as well as these eggs that have just been smashed into pieces, he comes into a battle with Gruul. And Gruul, well, I mean, logically, has no chance against this guy. He really, even without a fel-empowered artifact like the Skull of Gul'dan, there's not really a chance that Gruul would have to beat a dragon aspect. But thankfully...
Well, is Deathwing corrupt right now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Deathwing even has,
how powerful is he?
So this is 10,000 years after he would have betrayed everybody. And this would be when he has adamantite plates instead of Ethereum plates or whatever it is that you get in the Cataclysm expansion. So he's still all armored up. He's got the jaw. He's got, a decent amount of fel corruption and old god corruption spinning around in that old noggin of his.
Okay.
But
so is he's like the one I know in the cinematic almost, or
I would say, I wouldn't say even he hasn't quite been as injured as you would see him in that cinematic, because after the events of this, he'll go back to Azeroth, Alexstrasza will get free, and then he'll get jumped by all 4 of the other aspects. And that's when he is just like, ouchie, I'm going to go hide away now. So he's not completely fucked up yet, but he still is from
he's
using
that
the
big
dragon.
and that powerful.
Oh, yeah. Still that big, and he's also got a bunch of the lava fissures in his chest and stuff like that from using the dragon soul back before Malfurion stole it from him. So he's fighting with Gruul. I feel like this would have been a short fight, but I guess the Gruul is lucky that he, just before this, met up with the Alliance Expedition, Khadgar, Turalyon, Illyria, all of those people. And during this fight, Khadgar manages to cast some sort of spell that rips some of the plates off of Deathwing's body. So he kind of is falling apart, literally falling apart, and he is forced to retreat, and he drops the Skull of Gul'dan, which is how Khadgar gets a hold of it and ends up closing the Dark Portal, like we kind of mentioned. But also, as he's fleeing and leaves, that now leaves the eggs that were on Outland, and that leaves Ner'zhul, who we mentioned will eventually just open up a fuck ton of portals all across Draenor to try and, I don't really know, escape himself mostly from the Black Temple before he is captured by Kil'jaeden and turned into the armor of the Lich King. And as this happens, the entire planet of Draenor explodes. We talked about that too. But when it does explode, it lets off this fell wave of corruption and sends the basically remnants of the planet spiraling into the Twisting Nether, which is the kind of realm of the Burning Legion, basically.
This is all Kil'jaeden's, or excuse me, what's his name?
Ner'zhul.
This is all Ner'zhul's fault?
I mean...
why Outland is broken and dying?
So a lot of it was dying beforehand just because they were using fel magic, and it was leaving the land unusable. But yes, when it actually is shattered, that's Ner'zhul's fault.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I mean, he kind of deserves being put in some armor then. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with it.
I mean, again, even if you wanted to draw the line even further back, he was the one that brought Gul'dan into the Horde, that kind of first encouraged people to turn on the Draenei and use fel magics. Oh, yeah, he's always kind of been a sucker. But with this fel explosion that's led off by the destruction of Draenor, turning it into Outland and sending it into the Twisting Nether, a bunch of these eggs, pretty much all of these eggs, at least that I'm aware of, are touched by this energy from the Twisting Nether, and that's actually where it will create an entirely brand new flight of dragons known as the Nether Drakes.
They're beautiful, man.
Oh,
I love that mount.
The first truly amazing mounts, in my opinion, because they have the effects that come with their wings and stuff like that, and they're all ethereal and ghostly, and they just look magnifique. It does help that they're still kind of, even to this day, a pain in the ass to get, at least the original ones, so they still feel authentic.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's why Dude, that was one of the first cool mounts, that Ashes of Alar. Yeah, all in that expansion is probably what made me start wanting to collect mounts, is cool mounts like that.
And so yeah, this creates a new flight called the Nether Drakes. And the Nether Drakes essentially phase through reality in certain ways. They are, like I mentioned, kind of ethereal, ghostly, see-through, really. And there is also the problem that from this energy corruption, I guess you would just call it, that they age really, really fast. So while most drakes will kind of be like fairly small up to like not like too crazy big, leading into like 1,000 years old, and then you'll have like some of the super old ones, like we had Crassus and stuff like that, who's like 10,000 plus years old, and they get really big. Every Nether Drake that you've ever encountered in World of Warcraft is younger than 40 years old. So you've encountered some really big ones in the Burning Crusade. You'll encounter some really big ones. In even Dragonflight, I think that there's some that you'll encounter eventually too. But they are all under 40 years old. So they just age really, really fast for dragons. And following this, they are seen by the Dragonmaw Clan, who are kind of the remnants of the Dragonmaw Clan, following everything that happens with Deathwing and following majority of them going through the Dark Portal after they lose the Second War. And that leaves you with them once again being like, we should fly. We were born to fly. So they try and enslave these Netherwings, and they actually do manage to do this. And particularly, they managed to capture kind of the brood mother of most of these Nether Drakes, called Kirinaku. And through this, they kind of create a new resurgence for their clan on Outland. But they do, even still with this, eventually end up following under the leadership of Illidan once Illidan shows up after the Third War.
Would you say they're like enslaving them or just like domesticating? Like,
oh, they're definitely enslaved. There's even a quest line in Shadowmoon Valley where you have to go, and there's like one that's all chained up inside that little outpost that's right next to the Black Temple. And the whole reason that you have to go and free them is because like you meet with one of the other drakes outside, and they're like, "Go free my mate. She's a slave." So
Dragonmaw always like that. Like they, because I think of the dwarves, they have a good relationship with the griffins. I feel like, you know,
I would say that. Yeah.
Are they always enslaving?
Yeah, it seems really just like they were like, man, this is the only way to true power. And you remember how good things were back when we had red dragons? Let's get more dragons. So if it flies, they want to put a saddle on it, and they really don't care if the thing wants a saddle or not. Dragonmaw come into conflict. They enslave a bunch of the Netherwings and the Nether Drakes. There are certain factions of these Nether Drakes that don't really that don't get captured by them, but still kind of, either due to the nature of their creation through the Twisting Nether, are kind of crazy and kind of aggressive just towards everybody. But all of this kind of comes to a culmination when the Lord Kha'Zix, who is supposedly I say, because we really don't get any information outside of this event, like one of the main guys that's directly underneath Kil'jaeden himself. So he shows up on Outland, and he uses this magical artifact that is completely not mentioned at all. It doesn't even have a name. It doesn't have a description to the slightest. And he manages, through sheer fucking willpower, to reopen the Dark Portal.
Convenient. Very convenient.
Yeah. The plot demanded it. And for those of you that are counting at home, that is now 3 times that the Dark Portal has been closed and reopened. So, yeah, so the Dark Portal is reopened. This is an event that takes place just prior to us. Yes, to Azeroth once again. They are connected. Okay. And this leaves us with the Dark Portal once again in the Blasted Lands. And we now have, like I said, this event kind of taking place just before the events of Classic would come to its end. And we'll tie this all in together. I promise we're not just skipping into Burning Crusade. But during this event, there is the blue dragon Tiragosa, who is actually she was kind of set to be the life mate with Kalecgos. But after Kalecgos met and Vina Teague, the embodiment of the Sunwell, she's like, I think you like that woman more. You're kind of sick, you know that? And it is funny because she constantly shit talks him. She's like, man, I can't believe you have all this compassion and you constantly falling in love with humans and like humans and stuff like that. But also in this story, she has Jorad Mace, who is... We very briefly talked about Jorad Mace during the Blood Elf episode, because he does help the group of Kalik and stuff like, and Invina and stuff like that to restore the Sunwell. And he's a former Paladin of the Light that just fell out of the light kinda when Arthas did his whole invasion, but, you know, kind of realized that, well, it's actually I was me holding myself back. And Tiragosa actually ends up falling in love with this guy. So it is absolutely ironic that she talks so much shit.
Interesting.
And
He has a
also
type?
yeah, she's also a... Well, yeah, I guess so. Because she talks about Kalikos, and she's like, why don't you like dragons? Like, if I had to choose to be one of these visage forms, which is what dragons call their form when they turn into like a human or an elf or whatever. She's like, I would definitely choose to be an elf, because the elves are way prettier than all those uggo humans.
Wow. I mean, hey, you look at the stats. I think like Blood Elf is the most played class.
Absolutely. And I am willing to 100% bet it's because they're pretty.
I mean, I'm a Blood Elf, but that's just because you had to be a Blood Elf to be a Paladin back in the day in Horde. But yeah.
So these two figures feel this energy of some unknown dragon magic going on in Outland. So with this portal being open, Tiragosa being a blue dragon who her job is to, you know, keep in check the magics of the world, is like, through the portal. And they go through the portal. And they end up on Outland, and they end up meeting with Veriku, which is kind of one of these crazed dragons of the corrupted Netherwings. And through some ass beatery, they end up putting this thing down. And then she finds a bunch of the Netherwing eggs. And she kind of makes it her obligation. She's like, I need to be the sound mind and the inspiration for this new flight of dragons so that they don't all turn out like that fucking psycho.
Well, are they not Fel corrupted? Because didn't you say like a wave of Fel energy came upon them? Did you know?
See, I would have to say that they are Fel corrupted, but it also just seems like they might be like arcanely twisted, because it doesn't seem like regular Fel corruption where it like takes life. It's more like magical bait. It doesn't all entirely make sense. Like I said in one of our Illidan episodes, the lore in Outlands is kind of weak sometimes.
Well, are they all aggressive?
Are they all aggressive? No. There are handfuls of really chill ones, but most of those ones got enslaved by the Dragonmaw.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
So this event, where she is kind of watching out for these eggs and stuff, is actually going to lead to what is the beginning of the Burning Crusade expansion, where we, the heroes of Azeroth, would actually end up coming through the portal. And it is during this time that we encounter Ragnarok Bloodreaver, who is actually one of the other original Death Knights that Gul'dan ended up creating. So we talked about Terran Gorfin. He was kind of the main one. And there is also Ragnarok Bloodreaver. So he is a orc soul in a human body at this point. And he works for Illidan, and he doesn't like that. So he creates like this magical artifact, or actually I think he trades with an ethereal to get this magical artifact. And just for those at home who don't play World of Warcraft at all, have no knowledge, ethereals are, well, they're kind of hard to describe, but they are kind of just raw magic wrapped up in bandages. They're like space mummies. It's again, really hard to describe, but I think that does give you the at least right picture. And they did used to have physical bodies. We'll get more into that as we move into the Legion expansion and talk more about the Void. But they are magical beings, basically. And he manages to get this artifact that helps him to control these Netherwings. So he now has like this pretty thick army of Netherwings, and his plan is to go and launch an attack on all these Alliance and Horde that are coming through the Dark Portal. And he does. And obviously that's a poor idea because, you know, the heroes of Azeroth are loot goblins, and they now also have Tiragosa and Jorad Mace to help them out. So Tiragosa goes to face him, and Jorad Mace manages to destroy this artifact, run his hammer through his chest cavity, and put him down. Just spoilers, he doesn't last very long. This is only a 2-issue comic, so he really does not make it very far at all. And that is where you encounter this issue with the Netherwings, that they are seemingly, kind of almost mana addicted, kind of like the Blood Elves are, because as soon as they're severed from being controlled by this magical artifact, they begin to wither and die even faster than they normally would. They begin to just like lose their magical essence and like disappear entirely, basically. So,
I mean, who isn't mana addicted at this point? It seems like a pretty consistent
the Night Elves, let's go!
Yeah, interesting how, yeah.
But yeah, so Tiragosa sees this. She kind of realizes that the only way to free them from this sort of plague that's afflicting them is that she needs to connect them to some sort of super powerful magical artifact. She's like, ooh, I'm a blue dragon. I know where we can find like the most powerful of these magical artifacts. Come with me. So they go through the dark portal with all of these dying Netherwing drakes, and they make their way to the home of the blue dragons on Azeroth, called the Nexus. And the Nexus is, like I said, just kind of the home of the blue dragons. It is really empty nowadays because, like we also did kind of mention, when Deathwing betrays all of the flights, it's kind of the blues that really catch the brunt of the shit. And most of their dragon flight is killed. So it's a pretty empty plot.
Is this in Northrend?
It is in Northrend.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
The
Borean Tundra.
Borean Tundra, yep, that's where it's at.
All right.
Yep.
I think.
Yes. And so they go there, and they do actually manage to kind of purify this plague from themselves. So all of these Netherwing drakes are now able to survive without constantly, just fading out of existence. But with this, they begin to, I guess, just get kind of stupid. Not actually in the lore, but just logically, this is a fucking stupid idea. They see the plots of Deathwing that they kind of were created from. They see the Dragonmaw slavers, they see Ragnarok, and they're just like, I really don't like how everyone's trying to control us. So I think we're gonna go independent. We're cutting ourselves off from the label. And they also have this desire now to gain more and more power, especially magical power, so that they can securely gain their own sovereignty, but also maybe possibly try and subjugate the world of Azeroth. Tiragosa.
What a healthy concept. Are they corrupted? Why do they want to do this?
It is just seemingly because they are tired of being controlled, so they're trying to gain power strictly so that they cannot be controlled. And Tiragosa is even like, look, I understand y'all wanting to be free and all that, but I'm going to make this very clear to you. If you follow the path that Deathwing took and you start to try and subjugate the people of Azeroth, they're going to kill you. And this is actually something that their leader, who is a Netherwing drake called Zeraku, who is not too relevant, but he will come back into the story around the Cataclysm. He kind of mulls it over, going back and forth like, yeah, no, Tiragosa's right. She's looking out for us. She, has our best interest in mind. And going back towards like where his people are coming from. And he's like, but we need to get more magical power so that we can stop anybody who might threaten us. And they make the really poor decision to attack the blue dragons. They're like, these ones are the weakest. They got hella magic. We're going to attack the blue dragons. So they attack the Nexus. And during this chaos and this battle, I don't think they're really informed about it, but they may not know that there is a blue dragon who is significantly more powerful than all the other blue dragons are. Their aspect, Malygos. So while they're attacking, all this chaos is going on, Malygos wakes up from his sleep. And he seemingly has been sleeping for like the last 10 or so years after the battle with Deathwing. And he's pissed. Especially since the War of the Ancients, when he saw the hubris of the Highborn leading to the near destruction of the planet. He constantly sees all these mortal races and all these other creatures trying to get a hold of magic without really understanding the full repercussions of it. And he is beginning to not like that. So he sees... and he's also like actually losing his mind, like fully going insane, kind of like full bipolar disorder. The Netherwings appear to Malygos, and Malygos is like, what's your guys' problem? And they're like, we need more magic power. Give us the magic. We are the essence of the Nexus. And he is quite literally like, yeah, well, I am the very essence of magic itself. So I am going to basically obliterate you guys, and he does. He essentially just drains them of all magical energy and sucks them into himself. It's not even a fight. He literally is just like, snap of the fingers, Thanos snap, congratulations, you are now essence for me, thanks. And pretty much all of them die, with the exception of that main leader guy that I mentioned, Zeraku. So Malygos awakens. He kills all the Nether Drakes, at least the ones that are on Azeroth, and he absorbs them into himself. And it says in the lore that this is what helps to give him some clarity and like restore some of his sanity. And I am inclined to say that is horse shit, because I find it really hard to believe that these fell, corrupted black dragon modified eggs being absorbed into his body is very good for him.
No, it does not seem.
It doesn't seem very good. No. And this is where he does fully begin his plot, that he, being the guardian of magic in all of Azeroth, is going to basically restrict magic to only the dragons, which is a story that we are going to leave right there for now, but know that is definitely coming back into play. So Tiragosa sees all this. She's going to look over the Netherwing eggs that she can still take care of, because she is like super disheartened with how it went with them. So she's like, well, I guess the only option I have at this point is to raise up the next generation to be better. And we'll re-encounter her when we do hit Outlands in the Shadowmoon Valley. That is a lot of her quest line that you are doing to kind of free these Netherwing eggs. And we'll check back in with that in another time. Thank you for tuning in to Tides of Lore. If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow adventurers. Your support makes all the difference. Thank you. But we have more black dragons to talk about. There's been more black dragonry going on. And I did briefly mention that Deathwing ends up fighting with Alexstrasza and the other aspects. This is around the end of the Second War. And he loses. He has this plot to free Alexstrasza and steal her eggs. It doesn't work out. She gets free and fucks him up instead, and all the other aspects show up and fuck him up instead, and the dragon's so shattered, and they fuck him up, and like I said, all four of these aspects, they show up, they jump him. It is kind of a beatdown, and he gets really injured.
Nice. Deathwing is getting his ass beat. I love it.
It is because after the demon soul is shattered, they gain most of their aspectral power back, right? So there is still some magical energy that resides in like the shards of it, but after Ronan does blow up the dragon soul, it is now, they are kind of back to where they were before the War of the Ancients, before they gave up their power to the soul.
They should just take care of him right now.
They try. It doesn't seem like they had any intention of letting him live, but he does manage to escape. During the War of the Ancients, when he did originally kind of get himself all ripped apart by the Dragon Soul, he did go to Highmountain. And in Highmountain, there was the leader of the Highmountain Tauren, a man by the name of Wrynn Highmountain, Huln, Wrynn. And he was kind of a goat. He's a badass. He actually is the guy that has his spear that he uses is the hunter survival artifact weapon. So he sees this black dragon show up, and him having just experienced the War of the Ancients and all of the land masses shattering apart, sees Deathwing doing a big nappy in the middle of his mountain range, and he's like, I should get rid of that guy. So he actually gets a hold of this Titan Forged artifact. And this Titan Forged artifact is one of these, I think it's like 6 or 8 of these kind of really powerful magical artifacts that were given to the Titan Keepers by the Titans themselves to shape the very world of Azeroth. And they are known as the Pillars of Creation.
Well, this is Legion.
Yes.
This is Legion we're talking about. Everything we did in that expansion.
Kind of. You get the flashback in Legion. You see this event happen in Legion. So I guess I should also mention, since we're talking about Legion, the Pillars of Creation are actually what managed to shield the city of Suramar. I did mention the city of Suramar, where it was kind of made its own defensive bubble as the Legion attacked, and when the world exploded and everything, their city managed to not go under, is because they had some of these Pillars of Creation. So with one of these, a Titan Forged artifact called the Hammer of Khazgoroth, he basically finds Deathwing doing his sleep, and he's like, out of here, sinner. And he uses this magical artifact to banish him from the realm of Azeroth. And he sends him into the elemental plane, specifically the elemental plane of the Stone Mother, known as Deepholm. So that is where Deathwing gets sent for a while. until he eventually does come back. It is stated that he has gone back and forth between Deepholm a few times, but the reason that we're even talking about this is because he also finds a dragon egg, and this dragon egg is corrupted. All of the black dragon eggs are corrupted, just to make it clear. Because of Deathwing's like old god corruption and his fell corruption and everything that he's basically led up to with the War of the Ancients, all of his children are corrupted and kind of insane. So he finds one of these black dragon eggs and it's corrupted. And he also uses this hammer of Khazgaroth to purify this dragon egg, basically removing any of this old god taint from it using the Titan's order magic from this artifact, and he cleanses it. And eventually this black dragon egg hatches into a black dragon, and it's got these little tiny black horns. So Holn names him Ebonhorn, and he is then raised amongst the Highmountain Tauren as basically an absolute anomaly amongst the black dragons, because he is, for 10,000 plus years, the only black dragon to not be corrupted by this. And we'll see him again. So
he's in Legion a lot. I remember him.
He's also the leader of the Black Dragonflight now.
Yeah, he's chill. Oh, wait, he's the leader?
Yeah, they had Sibelian and they had, I always forget this. Rathian beefing over it, which I found hilarious. And then in the next patch, they were like, yeah, you both are kind of ass at this. Ebonhorn's the leader now.
And he is more down to earth.
Well, and it is because during these 10,000 years... God damn it.
Sorry.
During these 10,000 years with the Highmountain, he takes up the visage of a Tauren as well. And he acts as what is essentially just a spiritual, mystical guide for their race called a Spirit Walker. And he is essentially like a consultant to every leader that the Highmountain have for this entire time period. And he only reveals that he is a dragon to certain leaders throughout this entire time span. So basically, for the longest time, the Tauren are just like, hey man, that Ebonhorn guy does not seem to age. You ever notice that? And then they die, and the next generation doesn't seem to question it.
I mean, I've been thinking that with some people nowadays.
Aurelian, give me the answer. Yeah. What is your secret?
Yeah.
But yeah, so he basically... This is only kind of going to be a small little story for him, but we do want to talk about him because he is a black dragon, and he is important to the story eventually. And he, is for a very, very long time, the only dragon free of corruption. And he leads the Tauren for generations and generations. The Highmountain Tauren specifically, not the ones that are in Mulgore like we usually know.
Real quick, we talked about Rathian and Sibelian. Would technically both of them be corrupted?
It seems that Sibelian would be corrupted, but he kind of comes into the story after the old gods are gone, so I think that's kind of why they're like, maybe he's not corrupted. But
wasn't he on Outland? I swear he
was born on Outland, I'm pretty sure. Either that or he went to Outland. But he was on Outland, yeah.
I don't know, maybe because that was one that was dropped off by Deathwing. But I don't know, man.
I don't have the answers. Seems kind of weird to me. And Rathian won't be born until the events of Cataclysm. So he is just a twinkle in his father's eye at this point.
Would he be corrupted as well?
No, and he has a whole story on why that's not the case. But
okay,
he doesn't exist yet. So the other black dragon that we do need to talk about, we talked about Deathwing's daughter, Onyxia. And we talked about Ebonhorn, who is, technically also his son. And now we have one last son to talk about, which is kind of his favorite son, who really helps him to try and overthrow the mortal races of the world. And he goes by the name Nefarian. And just like his sister, and just like Deathwing, who take up the guises of like Davil Prestor and Katrana Prestor, he also takes up a guise. For some reason, he doesn't choose a Prestor name like the rest of them, but he goes by Lord Victor Nefarius, which is quite literally the most evil name that I could imagine for a human. If somebody told me that was their name, I'd be like, oh my gosh, you are a war criminal.
Doesn't he have a cool, fire crown, too?
Yeah, he does.
And he's got, a throne room.
Well, he's got, these glowing red eyes, too. And, again, if I saw this man and he was like, yeah, I'm not evil, I'd be like, this man's fucking evil.
Bro, he's got a chamber overlooking Blackrock Mountain.
Exactly. So... And that's actually where we're getting into right now. So Onyxia is handling the events in Stormwind. And it actually does give us some insight onto why Onyxia doesn't want the Alliance going into the Blackrock Mountains to stop the Dark Irons, because that is actually where Nefarian ends up going to. And he ends up taking control of the upper levels of the Blackrock Mountain, the area that is being controlled by a group of the Horde, not the Horde that we know, but the remnants of the first Horde that came through, called the Dark Horde. And he makes a laboratory. His whole purpose, he's not as much of a schemer like Onyxia is or like Deathwing is. His whole purpose, he's like, I'm just going to experiment with all these dragons and see what I can make. Hopefully we'll be able to save our race. Because also the Black Dragons at this point, 10,000 years after the betrayal of Deathwing, they've been getting fucked up. They essentially just get hunted nonstop by both humans, by the mortal races, and the dragons, who are just like, well, black dragons are bad, die. And like I said, they are kind of crazy. No, yeah, like I did say, they are crazy. So he begins working in this laboratory at an area of the Blackrock Mountain called the Upper Spire. And he begins to create terrifying weapons to twist dragons, infuse them with different types of blood from different dragons, as well as fell magic and all just sorts of crazy shit. And the Dark Horde help them. And the Dark Horde are led by a man called Dalrend Blackhand, or simply Rend Blackhand, who might recognize that last name. Blackhand was the original leader of the first Horde before Orgrim challenges him to a duel and kills him, which is kind of the exact reason why they don't join up with Thrall's Horde.
This is the guy that you kill in BRD. You take his head, and then you turn it in, and you get the world buff, right?
It's Upper Spire, I think, though. But yeah. He is there.
That's Horde only. It's a Horde only thing, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. He is the leader of them. He never forgave Orgrim for killing his father, and he doesn't like Thrall because Thrall is Orgrim's like protege. And he also, his entire clan really, is still super down with fell magic. So he would not fit in with the Horde anyway. And just to even give you a little bit of background on Rend. There was Rend and there was his younger brother, Maim. They were actually part of this clan after Orgrim takes control of the Blackrock clan. He then gives them the leadership over the clan known as the Blacktooth Grin, who we very, very briefly spoke about during the Horde and Alliance episode during the Second War, because they are that clan that is actually sent after Gul'dan, when Gul'dan's just like, yeah, I'm not taking Kolthalas, I'm going to the Tomb of Sargeras. So Orgrim sends the Blacktooth after them, and they are ambushed along the way by some navy that is led by the Proudmoore fleet, so a lot of them get fucked up. By the time they even reach the Tomb of Sargeras, they're fighting with the Twilight's Hammer, and Gul'dan gets killed by the demons inside anyway. So they're like, well, fuck, this is a big waste of time. So him and his brother flip a Yui, and they begin to head back towards the Blackrock Mountain, where they hear that Orgrim is being pushed back to. And they go to the Blackrock Mountain, and by the time that they arrive, the Horde has been defeated. Even though Anduin Lothar has been killed, Turalyon now leads the Alliance, and they are being pushed back constantly to the Dark Portal. So they flee to the Dark Portal with most of their remaining Horde that they even have. And it's actually at the Dark Portal that they would also fight with Turalyon. Two of them, both Rend and Maim, would fight with Turalyon, and he would whoop both of them.
Yeah, he's pretty strong, it seems, man.
He is kind of crazy. And I mean, again, he is like essentially the light itself, like the entity of the light itself's champion, at least for the humans. So
yeah, because he's the leader of the army of the light, right?
So, I mean, and this is before that happens, but it is kind of clear that why the light ends up choosing him, because he fucks. Yeah, just to put it plainly, yeah, he fucks. So
he's a faithful man.
They actually don't end up going through the Dark Portal. They do manage to escape capture by the Alliance, and they do stay on Azeroth, which is where they head back to Blackrock Mountain, and they go back into the Upper Spire area, and they begin to take over the Blackrock clan again, as well as, try and reclaim the glory of the true Horde, or yada yada. Some Garrosh shit, TBH. But as the Second War kind of came to its end, but Ner'zhul started sending people back through his own little special portals that he made with the Skull of Gul'dan, they meet up with Terran Gorfin. Terran Gorfin's like, yeah, we're starting another Horde back on Draenor, you should join up. And they're just like, shut the fuck up, idiot. The true Horde is here. You guys ran away like cowards. Don't be like that. So he basically tells Terran Gorfiend and Ner'zhul to fuck off. And they do. They are just like, fine, be that way then. So they stay in Blackrock Mountain. And that is where they begin to eventually help Nefarian create what is known as the chromatic dragonflight. Like I mentioned, he would begin to experiment with all these different dragon bloods and all these different dragon eggs that he could get a hold of, or these even whelps, like little baby dragons that he could find. And they were essentially trying to create a dragon that could use the power of every type of dragon. So like they could wield the power of the Emerald Dream. They could wield the power of the Life Binder. They could be the essence of magic like Malygos is, and so on and so forth. And it goes quite poorly for a very long amount of time.
I don't think I've seen a chromatic dragon that looked like it turned out well. Like they're all corrupt and
there is
something's wrong.
One that does end up showing up, and it's technically only kind of in stasis and not dead. I think it's actually inside the Dalaran prison, but I could be wrong about that. We'll talk about, he comes into Cataclysm, so we're not going to talk about him quite yet. But yeah, there is really only two that we ever really get to see, and they're both in the Blackrock Mountain. There is the Dragon Gith that is ridden by Wrynn Blackhand, his personal mount, when you do go and face him in the Spire. And there is also this, how do I describe this creature? It's a Dracodon, which is essentially means that it is kind of like, imagine Cerberus, but instead of 3 heads, it has 2, and they're dragon heads. And this creature is called Chromagus. And it does actually manage to have the powers of all 4 flights, or all 5 flights. But it, like I said, it doesn't seem to be perfect because it can't fly, it doesn't have wings, it is just kind of a big old chunky boy, and we'll encounter him as well.
Almost like a core hound, but I didn't know that it's not this technically chromatic dragon.
Yes, sir.
Interesting.
So Nefarian's first course of action in Blackrock Mountain with all of this stuff going on is he's like, I really need to secure the whole mountain. The fact that we only control the upper half of it and we got those damn Dark Irons and Ragnaros in the lower layers is really not very cool. So he begins to fight with the Dark Irons, and he begins to like try and take their city of Shadowforge, Shadowflame, something like that. And during this conflict, Wrenn's younger brother Maim is killed. It doesn't really give us too much of a description about this, but he's dead, which is okay with me because he is not a very interesting character. But yeah, he begins to plot to overthrow Ragnaros, the Elementals, and the Dark Iron. So they begin to kind of war with them. But even while this is happening, the heroes of Azeroth eventually show up. We go into the Molten Core. We handle Ragnaros. And he's like, well, that problem took care of itself. Great.
Well, he had fat loot, dude. Come on now.
Can I say I need me that Sulfurous?
You have the bindings for Thunder Fury.
Oh, yeah, Thunder Fury, yeah.
Yeah, like it's relevant the whole time.
So with Ragnaros dealt with, he's like, good, that problem's done. There is definitely nothing to worry about downstairs. He doesn't seem to realize that there is a leader of these Dark Irons by the name of Moira, who we talked about, who is really not a fan of all the shit that he's been up to. The same way that Moira would actually end up kind of spreading rumors that would get the attention of the heroes of Azeroth to go into the Molten Core and even handle that in the first place, she once again sends her word out, basically being like, yeah, there's this crazy Dark Horde up in here, and they said that they're going to go kill the true Horde, so Thrall, be careful, they're coming for you. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So the Horde hear these rumors, and they're like, well, we should go handle that. So it is stated in the lore specifically that the Horde is the one who handles this event in Blackrock Mountain. Even though you can go do it as Alliance, this is a canonically Horde questline that ends up happening.
I mean, it makes sense. You can only turn in the quest on Horde, get the buff as Horde, unless you get mind controlled as Alliance, you know? That makes sense.
Yep. So the Horde begin to make their way over to the Blackrock Mountain. They begin to do that they can to take down this black dragon and his little underlings. And that is actually where they will meet with a red dragon that ends up helping them out. It's I think it's actually a really cool quest, because when you go into the upper spire, you find him. This red dragon goes by the name of Velistraz. And Velistraz has basically made it his entire purpose in life to fuck up Nefarian. It is his vow in life to end the Black Flight. And when you go in there...
What pissed him off?
What pissed him off? Them imprisoning Alexstrasza and controlling the red dragons for a very long time. They love life, okay? They love living, they love freedom and stuff like that.
That's the thing. Yeah.
So them being
USA.
all that shit, they're like, hell no. So he's pissed. And when you go into the upper spire, you will find him in there. He's disguised as one of these orcs. Like, I think they're called like the Scar Shields. And you'll find him, and he's just like, wait, guys, I'm not bad like them. As a matter of fact, I'm here to fuck up the guy you're here to fuck up. And he tells them, he basically guides them through what is essentially the attunement for Blackrock Spire. And he's like, yeah, you guys are going to need this magical artifact to get in there. And it is called the Seal of Ascension. And I know where you can get it. It's on this dude's body. And 3 of these other dudes have some gems that once we unite all those together, then you'll be able to reach the guy that you're looking for.
Bro,
so
you do that quest in game. I just did that. The seal, and it's a bitch to do. Holy
it is
crap.
on. Oh yeah, it is insane.
The gems. Everyone's rolling for the gems. You have to turn the quest in inside the dungeon. Then you have to go to a place with 4 other people in the open world. Attack an elite dragon to have him breathe on each player's quest item. So you have to do it 5 times on 5 different layers. It's crazy, dude.
Yeah. So the Horde get a hold of the Seal of Ascension. They get their little fragments for it. They put them all together, and then they actually go to the Duskwallow Marsh, where it is the home of what is essentially the gatekeeper for Nefarian, the guy that is like make sure that all of his like elite guards are elite enough, and he has like these trials for them, which according to the lore, like basically none of them pass. And he's called Ember Strife. And yeah, you go there, you then manipulate Ember Strife into enchanting the seal for you. And this is also information that's given to you by Velistraz. And he's just like, yep, go handle that. You know, the Horde go out there to the Duskwallow Marsh. They get this imbued with power, and then they begin to make their way into the upper Blackrock Spire where Wrynn Blackhand is. And I mean, for the most part, it's just orcs and some dragons and dragonskin and stuff like that kind of get fucked up. As you step over the corpse of Leroy Jenkins and the Pals for Life, you make your way into Wrynn Blackhand's room, facing him, who is being ordered by Nefarian to handle it. I don't want to see these guys again. So he has, like I said, one of the only, I mean, basically the only successful chromatic dragon that we have, Gith. And you kill Gith, you kill Wrynn, take his head off, and that is where it leads you with only one person left, Nefarian. And this is where you will enter the Blackwing Lair. And as you enter the Blackwing Lair, you'll kill a boss, and by the time that you make it to the second boss, you'll see Velistraz, and you're like, hey, that guy. Velistraz, maybe it was a bit gung-ho, because as he rushed in there, he would actually end up being completely overwhelmed by Nefarian. Nefarian's just like, wow, that's cute. Anyway, I think I'm going to corrupt you now. Velistraz is like, wait, no, don't.
So he just got captured immediately.
Yeah, basically. And as you enter in behind him, you're like, Velistraz, what's up, buddy? And he's like, yeah, I'm losing my mind. I think I'm going to have to kill you guys. And you're like, oh, no. And he basically pleads with you. He's like, you guys are going to have to kill me before I kill you guys. So let's do that. And it's actually why he has like a raid timer where it's like, you got to kill him before he really loses it, right? Before he enrages. And yeah, as you're fighting him, he basically pleads with you to end his suffering as his dialogue lines go more and more into him being completely controlled by Nefarian. And you end up killing him. I did briefly want to mention this because I think Velistraz is such a funny character, just in the sense that he's kind of infamous in World of Warcraft. He's kind of the first what we would call a DPS check in the game, which is essentially like, if you guys don't have enough damage to kill this thing, he's just going to wipe you nonstop. And it earns him the very infamous title amongst the early WoW community of Veil the Guildbreaker, which is really funny.
Blackwing Lair was hard, man.
Oh, back in the day, for sure, bro. And yeah, that is like him essentially is why was so infamous at the time. Nefarian's fight is kind of challenging too, but yeah, the guild breaker does fall before the Horde, and then it leaves the rest of the Dragonslayer that you make your way through. You do fight pretty much just a ton of named black dragons that don't really have lore behind them, but they are nonetheless spawns of Deathwing and spawns of Nefarian. And you come across Chromagus, who we mentioned before. Chromagus was that kind of corehound looking guy that has 2 heads and doesn't really fly, but can use all the magical abilities of each of the dragons. Dead. Sorry, you had loot, you had to go. Can't preserve you. Gonna have to go. And the Horde kill him. And that is where they then make their way into the chamber of Nefarian. And as the champions of the Horde fight Nefarian, he is no match for 40 murder hobos looking for loot. And, he tries taunting, Shadow Flame, all this and that. Does not work. And he is killed by the Horde. And just like when Varian and the Alliance kill Onyxia, they're like, it would make really good decoration for our capital city. I think we're going to take his head and just drag it back across the ocean and put it on a stick. So they do. They chop off the head of Nefarian. They go back to Orgrimmar and they present it to this legendary warrior of the Horde, Varrock Sourfang, who then mounts it on a spike in the city center for all to see. And hopefully you're in the city when it happens, because you get a pretty gnarly buff for it.
I think even in like Crossroads and stuff.
But hey, I forgot it does reach that far.
The Horde has done a lot of good for the world, I'm hearing.
They
right?
I would say that this is, not the first truly heroic thing. Like, there is other stuff like Maradon and whatnot that, is heroic. But this is, like, truly good for everybody.
Well, they also killed Wrynn,
Yeah.
They also killed Wrynn. So they're getting 2 world buffs right there, canonically. I wonder who actually gets the head of Hakar. I wonder.
I'm not too sure. I do know that in either the next episode that we're coming up on or the episode after that, we're going to talk about the trolls and what they kind of lead into with Hakar. And maybe I'll have more information on that by then. But yeah, for now, the Horde has slain Nefarian. They've put the son of Deathwing's head for all to see in Orgrimmar, and that basically leaves the Black Dragon flight kind of obliterated. There is, Deathwing still resting in Deepholm now, and he'll check back in at a later time, but he's really kind of like one of the last, I would say, even 100 Black Dragons that even exist on Azeroth. So shit's looking rough for them. But that is also pretty much all that we have for this episode. You now know the story behind pretty much all of the Black Dragons that currently exist by the time you reach Classic WoW. And most of their fates of no longer existing.
Who's more down bad? Blue Flight or Black Flight? Which one?
Oh, Black Flight. Black Flight for sure.
Really?
The Blue Flight, at the very least, like, they have like a base of operations. They still go out and do missions and stuff like that. The Black Flight essentially has to be in hiding at all times or they're just getting clapped.
Yeah, not ideal.
And also, like, obviously all of their children, regardless of what they do, come out completely fucking bad shit. So the Blue Dragons, at the very least, like, Malygos is kind of losing it, but like Tyragos is still pretty chill. Kalikos is still pretty chill.
True.
Thank you guys for the support on this episode. Thank you for making it all the way to the end. If you are still here, go drop us a like on socials. We're on all of them. If you want to see some shorts or keep up to date with what we're doing. And we will talk to you guys next week when we cover either the trolls or Fandral Staghelm and the events of the Shifting Sands. So keep in touch. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode. Your guys' support truly means the world to us. If you're interested in hearing more, we have our full show on YouTube and Spotify, new episodes dropping every Tuesday. I also want to take this moment to give a special thank you to Fantasy Lo-Fi for providing the music for this episode. You can find them on YouTube at Fantasy Lo-Fi or on Spotify under Bits and Hits. Be sure to show them some love as their music does truly bring this journey to life. Once again, thank you for joining us on Tides of Lore, and we will see you next week.